Hello and good Friday. It's finally here. It's finally Friday. TGIF. Welcome into
Hallelujah.
Believe in Purdue. Correct. Welcome to Believe in Purdue. I'm Sam Sprunger, as always, joined by Grant Flora. Grant, it's Friday.
It's Friday. It's been a long week, and it's time for some IU Purdue.
That's
I
that's
have
right.
really been looking forward to this.
I sure hope that Matt Painter and the coaching staff decided, you know what, we're going to put that Ohio State game on a loop just all week. So anytime they come in, they were seeing a game where they really drop the ball, uh, but it leaves that a feeling of okay, we've got to go do business now, because like you said, it's IU. It's IU week. They come into Mackey Arena tomorrow or tonight at 8 o'clock on Fox, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Fox. The Hoosiers coming in struggling, Grant, and Purdue coming high off of the win against Michigan last week. It's going to be a good game.
Yep. For one thing, Fox primetime hoops. I don't know if Gus Johnson's on the call or not, but I'd assume that he is. I feel like he is pretty much every time it's Fox primetime hoops. But it'll be an interesting game, Sam. On paper, it looks like Purdue's gonna run away with this one and have a good
Right.
game, but that's what we thought against Ohio State too. But I think the danger with Indiana is overlooking them because they do have a lot of talent, and I think they do pose some potential threats to Purdue with Ballo in the middle. But I know there's no way Purdue's overlooking this team, and they're going to come out because it's Indiana, it's at home, and they're going to come out ready to play their best basketball. And Matt Painter mentioned in kind of a pregame interview, he said he's expecting Indiana's best, and
Sure.
Indiana's best is going to be tough because, like we said, they have a lot of talent. They potentially do pose some matchup issues for Purdue down low. And so it could be a better game than we expect, but because I expect Purdue to really take this seriously and come out on fire like they did against Michigan, um, I would expect Purdue to win this game without too much trouble. Maybe a little bit, but without too much.
Well, it may be one of those where for the first half, it's a very kind of back and forth game, maybe with each team getting a little bit of a lead and then falling back to the other. But I don't disagree. This is right now, and I don't ever really put too much credence into it. But ESPN's game predictor, matchup predictor, has an 86.8% chance that Purdue will win this game. I think that that's an accurate assessment, just simply for the fact that it's IU, and I don't know. I think it's really hard for, at least on the Purdue side, and I don't know how it is as an Indiana fan because I'm not one. But like Indiana week or IU game day is always one of those that you never look past the Hoosiers, because you don't want to have that we won, but we got beat by IU.
Yeah, and that's something I think Purdue's always done well. My dad always used to say it like this. He said if Purdue played every game of the season like they play against IU, they'd have several national championships by now. And I think that's a good way to put it because they typically come out and play IU really really tough, and they typically beat them, especially in Mackey. They have one loss to IU in Mackey since the Cody Zeller, Victor Oladipo era um, when Purdue was struggling and IU was one of the best teams in the nation. So you can
Yeah.
understand that. And that loss was 2 years ago when IU had a solid team and they were kind of built to exploit Purdue's weaknesses with a mid range game like Jalen Hood Schifino, Trey Galloway even did some damage to him in that game a couple years ago. So um,
I think Trey
I
Jackson
think
Davis was still there too.
right, yeah, and so obviously he was a big focal point for that
Yeah.
Purdue defense as well. So um, it's it's not common for IU to come in and steal a win at Mackey, even when they have good teams and even when they play well.
Hmm.
And this year, with a team that has struggled, like you said, against a Purdue team that's still out for blood because they're probably still licking their wounds a little bit from that Ohio State loss. It's not a game that I see IU winning, but at the same time, we've seen this before where it seems like Purdue, when they should win easily and you would expect them to win easily, that's when they don't win easily, or they might
Right.
even.
Well, I'm looking at their roster and their scorers for the season. And Omar Ballo it leads the team with a 14.5 point average. He's a big body. I don't know. I really don't know what to expect after a game that we just saw Purdue play a Michigan team that has a big presence in the blocks as well with Vlad Golden, and they essentially he got his, but they held everybody else, and they didn't get Vlad get into a role to where he got going into a groove and was able to really control the game from his standpoint. Um, I think I can Purdue do the same thing to Ballo and the Hoosiers?
I think they can because I think from a personnel standpoint, IU and Michigan are similar,
Yeah,
where they play two bigs. I mean, IU's going to play Renew and Ballo, just like Michigan played Wolf and Golden. Now the two bigs are different. Like Danny Wolf was kind of a stretch four, you could come out,
right,
dribble it, shoot it. Renew's not going to do that, but the reason Purdue did so well against them was because one, they've kind of found this identity in forcing turnovers, which
right,
has been a huge, huge help to them because it really kept Michigan from getting into their offense at all about half the time, it felt like. And then when Michigan did get into it, they just never kind of found that flow. And every time Vlad Golden touched the basketball, Purdue was sending double team.
right.
And so now if you send that again, especially against a guy who's maybe less of a passer, um, it's probably going to work because they schemed it well against Michigan. Now, if you're Indiana, you're watching the film from that game and you're saying, hey, we got to be ready for this. So maybe it doesn't work as well against IU. But
Mm-hmm.
the point is, sure, Purdue may struggle in those matchups, but they've kind of found this scheme to be able to handle it. And now I'm confident that they have the ability to not get burned in the post as badly as you might think.
Now you only averages 12.1 turnovers a game, but on the flip side of that coin, Grant, they don't force a lot of turnovers. And Purdue's been playing pretty well, only 6 against Michigan on last Friday. IU's only forcing 11.4 turnovers a game. So it to me kind of seems like if Purdue can do a little bit of, okay, we're going to force you into a little bit more of more turnovers than you're used to, and then maybe hey, we're going to take care of the ball because they're not really going to force a lot as long as they're taking care of the ball and making wise decisions.
Right. Then that's what I really trust Purdue more than Indiana in this situation because
Right.
Purdue has more experience. They're playing in Mackey. So that's going to probably bother Indiana at least to some degree. And then it's just Indiana's been struggling. So I definitely believe that Purdue will be able to assert their will more than Indiana. I think a couple X factors for the Hoosiers. One is Mackenzie Mbako because he's going to have a lot of positional size, and Purdue doesn't have a great defender to throw at him. No matter who they put, it's going to be a smaller guy. If you
Right.
put CJ Cox on him, he's just going to be outmatched physically, but he could still potentially try and handle him. But then you have to put Smith on Rice, which you could easily do. It's just usually Purdue likes to put Cox on the point guard. Um, the other thing is if you put like Fletcher Lawyer on him, which could be a move they go to. Lawyer's just not known for great defending because of a lack of athleticism that he's had. I think no matter what Purdue decides to do, Mbako's gonna have the ability to score. Now, which Mbako are we gonna see? Mbako's been up and down all season.
Right.
But if he really comes to play and takes advantage of that mismatch, Purdue's gonna have to be ready for that to find some scheme for him as well.
Well, I think one that I think could be a wild card on the IU side is Luke Goody. He's a good pure shooter. He plays good from the outside, but he just hasn't really stepped up to the point where when I heard he was transferring to IU, I was like, wow, that's a big step. Like that's an outside shooter that they needed, and he's averaging 8.5. But like if he gets going, he could go off for 25, and it's definitely been seen in the past.
Yeah, here's the thing and I agree with you. I think Luke Goody would be another option to be an X factor. For one thing, he's going to be coming into this game ready to play, personally motivated like
Right.
Purdue will. And maybe you can't count on that with some of the other IU players because they're transfers and they just haven't had that mental toughness throughout the season. But Luke Goody, I think you can, because he's been more that player this season. He's been one of the more competitive guys from what I've seen on their team. Plus, like you said, he can shoot it. Plus, he's from Indiana, graduated from the same high school as Fletcher Lawyer.
Yep.
Plus, he would have been around the likes of Braden Smith, and some of those Indiana players that Purdue has on their roster. So this game kind of means a lot to him, just because he's from the state, he's been around the rivalry. So he's a guy that if he brings it and has some of that rivalry magic, definitely could make a difference for the Hoosiers.
I'm not at all saying that I think IU's going to win this. You always have to take into consideration that in the past I've seen Purdue as a team that was struggling at the time, or maybe just not as prominent as IU, go in and beat IU. So I think that this game, it's such a cliche, and it's kind of like ugh, but it's so true. When you play your rival, when it comes to this is our version of Michigan, Ohio State for football. You know what I mean? Like, you don't care what the records are. Either team can win this game, and it just takes and it's almost a snowball effect. But in the same breath, I also think Matt Painter is. I would take Matt Painter over Mike Woodson any day of the week and twice on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Painter as a coach, his stock is as high as it's ever been. Mike
Right.
Woodson is quite the opposite at this point. And I mean, all the evidence points to that. And so I have questions about whether Mike Woodson will be able to scheme for Purdue effectively. And I have questions for whether he'll be able to get his team mentally prepared for Mackey and for Purdue. Now, on the other hand, Mike Woodson is 3-3 against Purdue in his career. That's impressive considering how up and down his career at Indiana has been. So he knows how to beat the Boilers. And that has to be taken into account when you talk about a rivalry situation and when you talk about a weaker team that's trying to pull off a massive upset. The coach does know how to handle Purdue. And if he can convey that to his guys and get them to pull it together and play that way, then you never know. And I think Matt Painter is right in saying to expect Indiana's best, because Woodson, you have to imagine Woodson will have something up his sleeve. Whether it works or not is a different story.
Now, the only thing that I take into concern is, with IU, and it's not a concern as for me, I guess the concern is, they've been able to put up some points. They're able to score some points. They when they win, I'm seeing a lot of 80s that they're putting points on the board. But let's see, 4 of their last 5 games they've lost, and the one game that they won 77-76 in overtime. And it just, knowing that, and it's underwhelming performances against Illinois at home, and Illinois is good. I mean, very, very good, but so under, like, a 25-point blowout, that doesn't make sense. Then you go to Northwestern, who struggled on their own and lost by 9. And then you have the heartbreaker that you had that we talked about with Mike DeCourcy on Wednesday, that maybe the guy traveled, but you know what? There were some mishandlings, and that's what concerns, should be a concern for IU fans is, what does Mike Woodson's in-game adjustments look like?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's one thing to play with Purdue for 10 minutes or the first half. It's another thing to play for 40 minutes in Mackey when they're going to be playing at 110%. So I think that's a great point. When you talk about Mike Woodson and his possibility of either getting fired or clinging to any hope he has at keeping his job, this game is probably the biggest opportunity he has to take the step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to fire a guy right after he goes into Mackey when Purdue's ranked in the top 10 and beats. So if from that standpoint there's some extra motivation for him, will it make a difference? I don't really think so, but from the perspective of IU fans as well, they might not even want IU to win this game because
Isn't
a
that
lot of them
something?
want to see Mike Woodson gone, and
Is
they know that.
Think about that.
Yeah,
Think
that's
about that.
that shouldn't be. I mean, you should never,
No.
as a fan, hope that your team loses to their rival. But I know that there are Indiana fans out there who feel that way.
Wow. Well, we're going to take a quick break. Then we'll come back and we'll talk about the game tonight on Fox, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern at Mackey Arena. We're going to take a break for the audio podcast. You're listening to BLEAV in Purdue on the BLEAV and Lounge Sports Network. Okay, we're back. So tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern, Purdue hosts IU. We've been talking about the all of this, Grant, and if you were a betting man, would you go with the 86% that ESPN says?
I'd be
Are
hard
you
pressed
that
not to.
confident? Are you that confident?
I'm confident that that Purdue will win. Am I? Would that be worth it to me? I don't know. I mean, the odds on that can't be very good. But at the same time, it's like I just don't see Indiana actually being able to pull it off. Now, if Indiana comes back and wins tonight, then feel free to tell me I'm wrong because I certainly would be. But this is I always have a lot of questions about Purdue, even when they play teams that they should easily beat. But this is one I've learned to be more confident when they play IU than when they play some of the other teams. So I am pretty confident that Purdue, whether it's by 1 point or by 20, going to win this basketball game.
Now, granted, it was at Assembly Hall, but they just played Maryland. Maryland is rattled off 4 straight. They won Illinois by 21. So like they're somebody that they gave a thumping to a team that we've seen be pretty dominant throughout the year, but then also lose some games. That's the craziness about this Big Ten, is Illinois can go beat a top 10 team in Oregon in Eugene by 30 points, then come home and lose to USC. Oh, and by the way, also lose by 21 at home to Maryland. That's not taking anything away from Maryland. That's just not something that you would anticipate to see. The reason I bring that up and go on that little diatribe a little bit, Grant, is that's who IU played last, and they played pretty well. They should have, and there were some controversies on whether or not the Maryland player traveled on that last exchange before the game-winning shot, but they played Maryland pretty well.
They did. They had some execution errors down the stretch. They should have committed a foul that they had to give right before that last shot, and they didn't. I think Mike DeCourcy talked about that in our last episode. They also didn't execute on their last possession very well. But despite all of that, I do think we saw some positive things from the Hoosiers in that game. I mean, Maryland was up, I think, by 10 points late in the second half, and IU rallied and responded and was very close to pulling it out before giving up a late 3. So I was impressed because I watched most of that game. I was impressed that they responded that way. The question is, a loss like that, what does that do to your confidence and to your mentality? Because now you have to go to Purdue, and you just lost one that would have been really nice to have. I mean, a win over Maryland is looking better and better the way Maryland's playing. So it just is. It looked good at points, but because they lost it in the way they did, I almost wonder if it does more harm than good.
Well, and that's the kind of the whole microcosm of the entire IU season is they've had really good points where they've been really good, and then when they've been bad, they just they seem to have everything jump up and bite them. And for Purdue, they've had one streak where, and I wouldn't even call it a streak of being bad. They got beat by Texas A&M, who was ranked at the time, and number 2 Auburn at the time. Yeah, and Penn State, who was at home and played a very good game, and they just didn't. Those were the 3 of 4 that they lost at one point before here just recently. So, it certainly seems like the Boilermakers have actually kind of, hey, we ran into our rough spot, and we've regrouped, and now we're getting it back right. That doesn't mean they're not going to stumble, but that just means that it seems like they figured it out a little bit more than IU.
Yeah, I think Purdue's struggles came earlier, or maybe they just lasted less time because IU feels like struggled early in the season and now. But I agree. It's Purdue's definitely found their stride outside of a one game kind of blip, and IU still hasn't found it yet. And it's just this. On one hand, this is a chance for Indiana to find their stride.
Sure.
A win at Mackey would completely change their perspective on how things are looking. They're still in the conversation for the tournament. I think they're in Joe Lunardi's first 4 out at least. I'm not sure where Mike has them.
I don't know that
they're
Mike
right there
had
on the
them
bubble.
in the next 4 out, but they were in flirting with that area.
Yeah, so they're still in the bubble conversation. A win at Purdue rockets them either right on the fringe or in. So there's reasons for IU to come in and to play really well and to really lock in. There's also reasons to believe that they'll come in and just never be in the game.
Well, and I think when we talked about it right at the beginning, I think that it's going to be a game where, the first 2/3, maybe even the first full first half, it's going to be one of those that it's going to be a little bit back and forth and kind of just, in a heavyweight fight where they're just kind of trying to feel each other out, and then all of a sudden, Purdue, the way they've been playing, is going to be able to, get maybe one of the two bigs or even both of the bigs in a little bit of foul trouble. Because you pull them outside a little bit, maybe. I just think that Purdue's got too much in their cupboard compared to what IU's got in theirs.
Yeah, I mean, again, IU has talent. They have potential to take advantage of some matchups, but Smith and Lawyer are going to be ready to play as much as ever. Draykoff and Wren, it'll be interesting to see how that matchup plays out, but I don't see Malik Renew being able to handle him. Just because PKR has proven how tough he is in the post to stop for anybody. Renew is still coming back from an injury. I believe he's only played a couple of games now, if that. And so it's just, yeah, there's too much going Purdue's way here.
Okay, so you didn't know I was going to ask you this, so I'm going to throw this at you. Okay, a little bit of a curveball right in the motion. Purdue hosting IU. You've got what is your most memorable Purdue IU game in your lifetime that it just stands out of? Yeah, that's what Purdue IU is.
Man, that's a great question because the problem is so many of them have been blowouts. Have been Purdue blowouts, and so it's like those all kind of mesh together a little bit because of how many there were. There are at least a couple moments that come to mind.
Okay.
I think a lot of Purdue fans will remember the Carson Edwards Duncan transition. It was on what was his name? Was it Josh Newkirk? Was the guard from Indiana that came in to contest that? It was something like that.
Poor fella. Then that's what I always said.
Yeah, and it was in Assembly Hall. And then John Octius did something really similar, who was a Purdue guard way back, early 2010s. Or maybe it's 2015. But he did a similar dunk that was just pretty insane. And obviously these are positive for Purdue. But just those kinds of plays that are made, you don't see Purdue make those kinds of explosive plays all that often. They're more of a grinded out type of team where their post players are making hook shots or they're dunking, but it's not like these are guards coming from way outside just flying in with one-handed monster jams. They're 7-footers. They're just reaching up, not even jumping and dunking the ball. So those two moments, and then the two close games I can remember. One was the Carson Edwards year, 2019. Matt Harms with kind of the tip put back,
Is that the
got to
49-47 game or something?
like 48,
Ridiculous like
46 or
that? Yeah,
something. Yeah,
something.
an absolute slugfest. The other one was one that IU won in Assembly Hall when Rob Finnessy hit that three, and it was IU's first win over Purdue in like 6 or 7 years or something like that. Mike Woodson had just come in, beat Purdue. Everybody thought
Yep.
Woodson was their guy. So,
Yep.
yeah, those are a few different moments I remember.
I've got 3 that come to mind. Now, I'm older, considerably older than you, but my first memory of college basketball was in my grandpa's living room, and it was Bob Knight throwing the chair across the floor against Purdue. That's my first memory of college basketball, period. But then we move forward to where I was a freshman in high school, and Glenn Robinson. In 1994, Glenn Robinson was with Purdue, Konzo Martin, Matt Waddell. I mean, all of these the first of 3 straight Big Ten titles were won by this team. Got the 1 seed in the Midwest. But the 2 IU games that year were incredible. The one at Mackey, it was on a really cold January, but Purdue, IU came in pretty darn good. That was a Damon Bailey, Allen Henderson, those types of gentlemen that are on that team. And Glenn Robinson had a pretty rough first half, but absolutely exploded in the second half. And Purdue ended up winning in overtime. That's the positive. The second one was when Purdue went to Assembly Hall. Purdue ended up losing by 2 points, but but Glenn Robinson and Purdue forced Bob Knight to do something that I had never, ever, ever seen in my life, and that was play a zone defense, because Robinson was lighting it up, and Knight didn't know how to stop it, and they threw a zone defense at Glenn Robinson. They ended up winning by 2 that game, and Purdue split the season series. But those 2 games in the 94 season, incredible.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of those games between IU and Purdue back in the 80s and 90s were really incredible. I mean, Gene Cady and Bob Knight,
Oh, yeah.
phenomenal rivalry just in coaching.
Mm.
But yeah, definitely that chair throw is iconic to this day. So I wasn't alive back then, but I've seen the footage more times than I can count. So
Well, hopefully we have another very, very positive. I think we will have another positive Purdue memory with their game tonight against IU at 8 o'clock on Fox, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Fox at Mackey Arena. It's going to be a blackout, so I assume they're wearing the black uniforms like they have the past couple of years against IU. But I'm really excited for what's going to happen tonight.
yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, just kind of a side note. I'd love to see Purdue playing gold in Mackey when they're playing IU. Like, I'm just not a huge fan of the wearing the away jerseys at home. Like,
Me neither.
yeah, just give me the home jerseys, and I feel like the gold's a nice contrast still. It's like they're playing them white. They're playing in their color, but
Right.
they're not wearing the away jerseys either. So I'd love to see him play gold against the Crimson, but we'll take the black, I guess.
Probably going to be in black. It
Yeah.
has been the last 2 years, so I
Oh,
imagine
yeah.
it will be this year too. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on this Friday version of Believe in Purdue, the IU preview. We'll have at least one more of these when it comes to previewing an IU game. But enjoy the game tonight, and you know what? We'll see you on Monday, and we'll talk about what happened tonight at Mackey Arena. See you, Grant. Have a good one.
So yeah.